Welcome back, everyone, to another Explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating. We're unpacking a published remote viewing session conducted by Ryuho Okawa. Now, regardless of where you stand on esoteric practices, you have to admit, this text presents an incredibly gripping and highly detailed narrative about what supposedly exists on the far side of the moon. So let's just jump right in and visualize exactly what this alleged extraterrestrial outpost looks like.
It's a question that's captivated us for decades, right? Ever since we realized the moon is tidally locked, forever hiding one of its hemispheres from our view, we've wondered what's back there. Well, according to the source material we're exploring today, the answer absolutely isn't just barren rock and dead impact craters. This remote viewing session claims to completely pierce that veil, taking us on a psychic journey straight to a heavily camouflaged, highly active extraterrestrial frontline base.
But before we get to the wild stuff, let's ground this in actual lunar geography. The text doesn't just point vaguely into the dark. It zeroes right in on a very specific real-world location. We're talking about the Tsiolkovsky Crater, which sits right next door to the Fermi Crater. In the remote viewing session, the author directs his focus intensely onto the rugged, uneven terrain surrounding this massive impact site.
So as the author's psychic perspective zooms into the crater, the text describes this bizarre visual transition. Imagine you're looking at what seem like normal, bumpy lunar mountains, and then suddenly you realize one of these mountains isn't a mountain at all. It's an artificially constructed dome. It's a massive structure purposely designed to blend in and completely evade detection from any satellites we might have orbiting the moon.
The imagery the author uses here is so specific and, honestly, deeply strange. The structure is described as looking just like a giant shell, specifically an Akoya oyster or a clamshell nestled right into the steep lunar cliffs. The text notes that this outer shell has a yellowish-brown or ochre color, kind of like a sea urchin, which makes it the absolute perfect camouflage against the stark, dusty lunar landscape.
And here's the crazy part. This massive oyster-like structure isn't even static. According to the viewing session, the top right side of the shell can actually open and close. When it senses danger or just needs to stay hidden, it snaps completely shut, perfectly mimicking a natural, jagged mountain peak. It's only when the base partially opens up that an observer would even realize it's a massive, hollowed-out facility.
Okay, so what's inside? As the psychic vision penetrates the shell, things get incredibly complex. The author describes seeing a giant, spinning circular disc fitted perfectly into the lower half of the structure. Moving further inward, there's this vast network of straight pathways and grand spiral staircases winding outward. And right there in the very center, a gigantic power source driving the entire hidden operation.
So we have a massively engineered, camouflaged oyster base hiding in a real lunar crater, which naturally leads to the most critical question in the text. Who built this thing? Who was actually walking up those spiral staircases? Well, the remote viewing session details a direct encounter with one of the entities acting as a guide for the facility. And let me tell you, the description is unforgettable.
This brings us to the real core of the author's findings. The Frontline base is managed by what the book categorizes as black goat-type extraterrestrials. It's a striking image that totally throws out the typical gray alien trope we're all so used to seeing in pop culture. This is the exact entity that steps forward in the text to act as the psychic guide. And we absolutely have to talk about the sheer scale of these beings. The text explicitly notes they are a staggering 5 meters tall. To put that into perspective for you, that is over 16 feet tall. A normal human being would barely reach the knee of one of these guys when standing right next to it.
So picture this, based on the source. You have an entity standing completely upright on 2 legs, entirely outfitted in a sleek, futuristic spacesuit. But its head? It has the face of a goat, covered in black hair, complete with backwards curving pattern horns. The text makes it very clear, though, that this isn't a literal animal. It is a highly advanced, humanoid-structured being. It just happens to possess distinctly goat-like facial features.
Oh, and they are definitely not alone. When asked about the population of this specific base near the Tsiolkovsky Crater, the entity reveals there are approximately 2,000 of these black goat-type individuals stationed there. Think about that for a second. That implies a massive, highly organized logistical operation. It's not just a tiny observation post. It's a fully staffed, functioning lunar colony. Now, given their intimidating appearance and towering 16-foot stature, you might expect the text to describe them as a hostile, invading force. I mean, it sounds terrifying, right? But here is the fascinating twist in the narrative. The text describes their operations and motives as highly moderate. This massive camouflage dome isn't a staging ground for a planetary takeover. Actually, it functions much more like a cosmic rest stop and a learning center.
The source breaks down the base's functions, and they are surprisingly practical. It essentially serves as a transit hub. The base is a place for energy replenishment, and it acts as a staging area for final adjustments before these beings travel down to Earth. It also serves as a rehabilitation and study center. It's basically a rest stop for entities to recover, debrief, and learn before or after their missions. The text really emphasizes this moderate operational model, pushing back hard against our usual sci-fi fears. It highlights that these beings are actually quite cooperative, using this frontline outpost purely for logistical purposes. According to the remote viewing, they essentially operate as part of a larger, organized network of extraterrestrial intelligence that simply monitors our planet.
Furthermore, the session clarifies their overall stance toward humanity. The text indicates that these black goat-type aliens are part of a broader faction focused on Earth's defense and observation. So yes, they are monitoring us, but according to this source material, they are positioned as a protective, or at the very least neutral, observational force, just quietly maintaining this hidden way station out of our sight.
Which leaves us with a truly compelling thought experiment to close on. We've just mapped out the text's claims of a giant, oyster shell camouflaged base powered by a massive spinning disk, populated by 2,016-foot-tall goat-headed aliens, acting essentially as a cosmic truck stop and rehab center just over the lunar horizon. If such an advanced, entirely moderate logistical presence were ever definitively proven to be resting just out of sight, how in the world would humanity react? It completely flips all our preconceived notions of what extraterrestrial contact might actually look like. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the source material. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.